The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on Atlas TI 8 for Windows. My name is Ivana, and I'm the project coordinator with Atlas TI. And so today what we're going to be seeing is an introduction and a global overview of Atlas TI 8 for Windows. And so we'll see how the software looks, how it works, and how you can apply it in any of your qualitative research projects. Now I've also put up here our contact information, and I invite everyone to take a note. If you ever have any questions about anything with Atlas TI, you can always count on our support. Just give us a call or send us an email, and we'll be happy to help. Now, if you don't see the telephone number for your country listed here, just take a look on our website and you can find all the telephone numbers of all our international offices. Now, in addition to this, I have a piece of good news for everyone here today. After seeing today's presentation, if you decide to purchase Atlas TI, all of you can count on a 10% discount coupon. Just send me an email and let me know, and I'd be more than happy to send along that discount coupon to you. So I'd like to begin by saying, what is Atlas TI? What are we all looking at here today? Well, Atlas TI is a computer-assisted qualitative data analysis software. In other words, Atlas TI is a tool that we can use to analyze any kind of unstructured or non-numerical data. So we can use Atlas TI to identify the themes or patterns or meanings across virtually any type of qualitative data. Now, although Atlas TI won't do the analysis for you, it can certainly help. And so it can help us make sure that our analysis process stays organized and transparent, and we can integrate our analysis across a variety of sources. Now, in addition to this, we can also use Atlas TI for teamwork. We can combine qualitative and quantitative analyses. We can carry out triangulation. And of course, we can analyze a great variety of types of data. So we can analyze textual data. This could be, for example, interview transcriptions or academic articles. Atlas TI is also a great tool for the literature review. But aside from text, we can also analyze images, audio recordings, videos, geodata from Google Earth Maps. We can also directly import data from Twitter, Evernote, bibliographic reference management softwares, and Excel. For example, if you've conducted a survey and you have open-ended questions, you can also import all those responses into Atlas TI and analyze them. And of course, we can put all these different types of data in the same project if we would like, and analyze the overarching patterns and trends. A little bit about the different Atlas TI products. Well, today we count on Atlas TI version 8 for both Windows and Mac computers. Any Atlas TI project is perfectly compatible and transferable across both operating systems. So even if you yourself use both computers, or if you work in a team that has a mix of Mac and Windows computers, you can count on Atlas TI. In addition to the desktop versions, we also have a free mobile app for iPads and Android tablets. And so this can be really useful maybe if you're out in the field collecting data and you want to already start collecting all your data in one place and your notes and thoughts. Then you can always download the Atlas TI mobile app for free. Now finally, we've also recently launched a brand new version of the software, and that's Atlas TI Cloud. This is the first version of Atlas TI that's completely based online. And so, you don't even need to download and install a software. In reality, you just need a computer with an internet connection, and you can enter into your Atlas TI Cloud account and continue analyzing your data. Now, at the moment, Atlas TI Cloud is in its beta version. And while we remain in the beta version, you can all use it for free. So certainly if you're interested, please feel free to enter our website. You can create an Atlas TI Cloud account for free as well and analyze your data online. Now, any projects from Atlas TI Mobile or Atlas TI Cloud can be imported into the desktop versions to also continue your analysis. But now if you do decide to go ahead and get Atlas TI 8 for Windows to have the full software on your computer, well, all of our licenses include full functionality. So it's a one-time purchase and you get the whole software. There's no extra charges or hidden costs that'll come up later on down the road. And any updates that we release to Atlas TI 8 are also included for free. So for all you students here today, well, you can get a student license of Atlas TI, and this of course comes at a significantly reduced cost. And you can get this for a period of 6 months or 2 years. Now, even if this time runs out, but you're still studying and want to continue using Atlas TI, You can, of course, extend your student license, so you'll have it for the full duration of your studies. And for all you other researchers here today, you can get a single user perpetual licenses or a lifetime license of Atlas TI. Now remember, whether you're a student or professor or another kind of researcher, all of you can count on that 10% discount coupon for these different kinds of licenses. Now, if you want to already try out Atlas TI today and get started with your analysis, you can download our free trial version. Our free trial version has no time limit, so you can use it for as long as you would like. And then it is the full software. It has all of the tools and functions that the full software has. The only limitation is in the size of the project that you can create. But as long as you stay within the size limitations, you can save your project, close it, come back to it, and use it for as long as you'd like. And it's certainly a great way to start getting to know Atlas TI and even beginning your own project with it. Now, aside from the licenses, you can also find on our website a great variety of learning resources that we offer. For example, if you and your group of students or colleagues or peers want to learn more about Atlas TI, you can request a free on-demand group demo webinar. Basically, you would just need to let us know what parts of Atlas TI you want to learn more about, and then we'll prepare a personalized presentation for you and your group. Now, if you want to learn Atlas TI in even more depth, you can always attend one of our premium trainings. We offer these all year round in online and face-to-face formats, so you can always attend any of these courses and learn, all about Atlas TI and even qualitative methodology. And upon completing any of our premium courses, you'd also receive an official Atlas TI certificate. Now, aside from the trainings, you can also find the full manual. We have a quick tour guide that's great for any first-time users. We have a research blog full of real-world case studies or best practices articles. And what I would particularly recommend are our video tutorials. We have a lot of different video tutorials covering each aspect of the software. So it's a great way to learn Atlas TI or just to see, how you can take advantage of all the different features. But of course, if you ever have any questions or doubts, you can always count on our support. Just give us a call or send us an email, and we can help you with, using the software or purchasing it. Or if you ever have any technical problems, we also have our technical support staff that'll be there to help. So definitely count on our support. And now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at Atlas TI 8 for Windows. So here we are inside Atlas TI. And so I already have a project open here in which we're investigating children and happiness, or the effects of having children on parents' happiness. And this is a sample project that we created just for showing and teaching Atlas TI. And you can find the same project on our website. So if you'd like to download it and open it on your own computer, feel free to. You can see the Children and Happiness project there as well. So along the top, we can see, as per usual, we have all the functions here in the main ribbon toolbar. These are organized in a series of tabs, so we can easily navigate throughout the software. And now, if you're ever wondering what a certain button does, just hover your mouse over that button, and then this help text will appear, explaining, what this is or how it works. And so we always have this available throughout Atlas TI, so that certainly makes it easier to navigate the software, and so you can feel free to explore always. And if we ever do make a mistake, click on something we didn't mean to, these things happen. Well, there's no need to worry because we can undo and redo up to 100 steps of our work. So we can just sit back and immerse ourselves in our analysis. And if need be, we have those handy undo buttons up there. Now on the left-hand side here, we have the Project Explorer panel. From this panel, we'll always be able to see and directly access any part of our project. So the first thing we see here are our documents, and we have 45 documents. We can open up the list of documents and see all 45 of them here. All right. But now, what is a document? Well, documents in Atlas TI simply refer to any source of information that you're going to be analyzing. In other words, your documents are your data. And remember, we can analyze textual data, such as articles, or participant responses. In this case, we also conducted a survey with 2 open-ended questions, and so we have all our participants here, and we can also see how they answer the questions. But documents can also be videos or audio recordings, images, Google Earth maps, tweets from Twitter. Any type of data we're going to analyze, we'll add to our project as a document. And so to add the documents to your project, you'll just click here, and you can add the files from your computer. So our documents are our data. And so then how do we analyze data in Atlas TI? I'm going to open up an article here that we haven't yet read and analyzed in depth. And so in this case, we also use Atlas TI for the literature review part of the analysis. But of course, the practices would be the same for analyzing any kind of textual data. And so what do? Well, we start reading what we have here. And then anytime you come across anything that captures your attention, or maybe anything that can help you answer your research question, excuse me. So whenever you come across, some piece of information that can help you answer the research question or something relevant for your study that you want to capture, well, all you need to do is highlight that segment of the text. Now you can select as much or as little text as you want. Always with Atlas TI, the full power of the analysis remains in our hands. And so we choose how we want to segment the information. Now to save this segment, we can just right click, and we have some different options here. We can simply save this quotation. Now on the right hand side, in the margin area here, we see this blue vertical bar. And this is showing us the size and location of a quotation in this document. So quotations are simply segments of the data. So we highlight, and we can simply save these segments without anything else attached to them. Atlas TI doesn't force us to put a code or a name or anything like that. If we want, we can just save the segments, and then maybe later I'll come back to it and revise it. So, Atlas TI is very flexible, and so you can adopt it in just about any qualitative research methodology. But now, let's say, okay, as I'm reading, I do want to go ahead and already start sort of capturing my analysis on this information and organizing all these bits of data. So let's say I find another interesting quotation here, so I highlight it, right click, and now I want to go ahead and already associate some codes. So I'll click on Open Coding. Now, what is a code? What do we mean with coding here? Well, a code is simply a word or a short phrase that's describing something we're seeing in the data. We can also think of codes as tags that we're going to go attaching to all these different bits of information so we can start organizing everything. So with open coding, we can create new codes, any kind of codes that we want. And so we just type the code names right here. So for example, I can see that this quotation has to do with well-being as well as families who have children and happiness and life satisfaction. So in this example, I'm just creating codes based on what I'm seeing here in the information. But you can create any kinds of codes that you would like, whether it's to synthesize certain analytical points you're looking for, or if you just want to describe what's going on in the data. And like I said, always the power is in our hands to decide. And we can add as many codes as we want to any quotation. So now we have the quotation saved, and we have these codes associated to it. So later we'll see how we can tell Atlas TI, for example, show me everything that I found about well-being, and then with just a click of the button, Atlas TI will show us all the quotations that we have associated to this code here. So with open coding, we can create whatever codes we would like. That's why we call it open. But now let's imagine, as we continue reading through the text here, we come across a phrase that we love the way in which the author expressed something. Or perhaps we want to capture the exact words that our participants used. So in these kind of examples, we could also take advantage of in vivo coding. Now what in vivo coding does is it'll take that exact text that we select, so we choose a phrase here, right click, and in vivo coding. And now what it will do is convert that text into a code for you. So this is another way that we can generate codes and go through, capturing these interesting bits of information from the data. And then, maybe later I come back and I realize, okay, well, yes, this code is important, but, I want to include the context in which this occurred. So I want to expand my quotation a little bit. Well, we can always easily resize any of our quotations. We just drag and drop the ends, and we can easily adjust the sizes. So we can create new codes. We can create codes directly from the text. Now, what happens if, we continue analyzing and so on, and, well, eventually we're going to start having some codes repeating. Maybe here, once again, the author's talking about well-being. And so we just created that code earlier, and I don't want to have duplicates. I want to capture all the same information under the same code. So then how do we use our already existing codes? Well, let's take a look at the codes we have in the project. So on the left-hand side, we can see we have 94 codes in this project here. Let's open up the list and we can see them all. And so here we have well-being, that code we just made. So to associate this code to this quotation, just drag and drop. And Atlas TI saves the quotation and it's associated the code for us. So we can also carry out coding by simply dragging and dropping our codes from the left-hand side. And so those are some of the different ways we can go through analyzing text. And up until now, I've been showing how to do everything by right-clicking. But as you may have also noticed, you have the same options up here. So often in Atlas TI, there's more than one way to do the same thing. And that's just so that each of us can work in whatever way we find most comfortable. So coding is one of the sort of the main parts of the analysis here. It's one of the things that's going to form the foundation of our analysis. But, as I'm going through and reading this article and I'm adding codes and dragging and dropping, and it's pretty straightforward. But meanwhile, I do have a lot of ideas in my head. What I'm reading here, I find it really interesting what the author is saying. And it reminds me of something I read in another article about well-being. And, I'd like to note down my ideas somewhere. Well, whenever we want to write down anything in Atlas TI, we can use a memo. A memo is simply a notebook. It's a blank space that we can use to note down anything that we would like. And of course, we can create as many memos as we want. So it's definitely a great thing to take advantage of to help with our data analysis here. So let's say, that here in this quotation, this gives me an idea and I want to write this idea down. So let's go ahead and make a memo. Under the Home tab, we can create new entities here. So I'll make a new memo and I'll use it to write about well-being. And so now we have a blank space, and just like any text editing program, we can change the font or style or size, color, so we can structure it however we'd like. We can even insert the timestamp so that it automatically puts the date and time. Very convenient and useful to have so we can track the development of our analysis. And so now we can use this space to write out our analyses and ideas, any descriptions of what we're doing or what's going on in the data. Well, we can also use memos to note down any questions or doubts that come up during the process. Maybe to keep a list of the tasks that I have to do every day. Also, I always have a memo for my research diary. That's an important part of any project, and so to write what you've done every day and track your progress. I mean, the possible applications of memos are very numerous, and so I'd certainly encourage you to be creative. And, well, a general piece of advice of, whenever anything comes to your mind, just write it down in a memo. We never know if it's going to be the beginnings of a great idea, or maybe it's just something that we realize didn't pan out. But definitely by forcing ourselves to put our thoughts into words, to write it down, it certainly will help us crystallize our understanding of the data. And, writing is an important part of qualitative analysis. And so with memos, we can already start developing all our ideas here. And so I could say now, I find it very interesting how Angeles, I have the citation right there in the title of the document, defines well-being because, and so on and so forth. In reality now, I would take time to write out all my ideas and reflections here. And then, okay, we'll say I'm done, I'm happy, so I'll save the memo, and we can go back to the article. But before we move on and continue reading, well, it was this quotation here that inspired my reflections in this memo. And so we want to make sure that we'll remember that this memo is talking about this quotation, right? Well, just like we can associate codes to our quotations, we can also associate memos. And so to associate a memo to one of your quotations, you'll do it in the exact same way that we did with the codes. Just take a look on the left-hand side, click the memo, and drag and drop it on top of the quotation. And now we also have the memo associated here. We can double click to get a preview of the memo right here. We can open it again and continue writing. So the fact that we can also directly associate our memos to the pieces of data is immensely helpful because, on the one hand, we're already elaborating the rough drafts of our analyses of our final article right here in our memos in Atlas TI. And on the other hand, we can directly associate our analysis to the supporting empirical evidences. And so this is a great way to develop, your analysis of all the data and organize everything. And this here, I would say, is the foundation of analysis in Atlas TI. We segment the data by saving quotations, we associate codes, and we write in our memos. And so that's where we're going to spend most time working in Atlas TIs, analyzing all this data. And if we do that well, then, everything else is going to come much easier. And so this is, manual analysis, so to speak, that we go through and read everything and reflect on it. But, being a software, we could also take advantage of some of the tools that it offers us. So for example, I've just added this article here and I haven't even read it yet in full depth. And before I get, deeply involved into all the little finer details here, well, I just want to have a quick global overview of what's going on in this article. What are the main concepts this author is talking about? I want to conduct a content analysis. So we can easily create word lists and word clouds to analyze word frequencies. So we just click here and analyze, Atlas TI will now generate a word cloud for us. And we can see the frequencies of all of the words in this article. And so we can see which ones are occurring more or less frequently. And we can also edit this word cloud. If you want to change the layout, how it's ordered, the threshold, if you only want to see words occurring more than a certain number of times. And we can also choose, if we want to exclude certain words. We can take advantage of the stop word list. And so by using, in this case, using the English stop word list, it'll remove words such as a, and, of, the, so these common words that occur very frequently, but, that aren't so interesting for content analysis. But we can, of course, edit our stop or go lists, if you want to do more specific kinds of content analyses. We can also analyze more than one document at a time. You can just mark it here. And then, of course, we can save this word cloud as an image. And so then, maybe I want to include this in my final report or my presentation. And so then we can easily save it here, and we also have that. So taking a look at the word cloud here, I can see that the author is talking about children, satisfaction. So it seems like it's certainly relevant to my study. And now I can see that, let's take a look here. For example, effects comes up 59 times. And I wonder, what kind of effects is the author talking about? Are they talking about the effects of parenting or children, or, what kind of effects? In what context is this coming up? Well, we'll go back to the article. And now whenever you want to search for a particular word in any body of text, you can also take advantage of autocoding. Now what autocoding does is it'll search for whatever word you're interested in, and every time it finds this word, it can automatically save a quotation and associate a code for you. So you just tell Atlas TI what code do you want to use. We can use any of our already existing codes or create a new one. I'll just go ahead and create a new one since I don't know yet what kinds of effects the author's talking about. And then we tell Atlas TI what size quotation do we want it to select. Should it just highlight the word, or the whole sentence where this word appears, or the whole paragraph? And then we'll go ahead and confirm the matches. So we've begun the autocoding, and Atlas TI found the word, and it's highlighted the full sentence in which it appears. And now we can decide, do I want to code this? Is it something relevant for my study, or no, and I'll skip it. Well, it found it in the abstract. Personally, I'm not so interested in coding the abstract, so yeah, I'll go ahead and skip it. And then it immediately jumps to the next find. We're still in the abstract, and okay, now we're in the body of text, and I can see, and yes, this does seem like something interesting. So I can see effects of having children on life satisfaction. I want to code it. and next find. So with autocoding, we can very quickly and easily filter through any amount of text and identify where we have these possibly relevant segments of information. If we unselect the option to confirm, in that case, we're letting Atlas TI go ahead and automatically code every time it finds the word. And so now Atlas TI just went ahead and did it. And so now we can go through and see all the quotations that it created, all the information that it found. And then, of course, we can continue from here, adding our memos and our other codes and continuing to analyze this information. Maybe, I want to delete some quotations or expand some of them. So, of course, we can go through now and edit any of this. But with autocoding, we can very easily identify where we have, with information that we're looking for, what's interesting for us coming up here. So these kinds of things, content analyses and autocoding, they could be, maybe particularly helpful at the beginning parts of any study when you're kind of exploring your data and just seeing what's out there. And it's a nice way to do that. And then, once I get a good enough idea, then maybe I'm ready to go through and read everything and analyze it in even more detail. And so those are some of the different ways that we can analyze textual data. Now, what about if I want to work with multimedia data? Maybe I have some videos or audio recordings. Well, we can add our multimedia data to Atlas TI, and of course from the software we can directly watch or listen to it. We can adjust the volume or the playback rate if you want it to go faster or slower. But so then how do we analyze this? Well, just like we can analyze textual data, we segment it by creating quotations and we associate codes and memos. Well, we're going to do the same thing here with our video or audio data. So let's see then, how do we select a segment of our video here? Well, we'll just go to the right-hand side next to the margin area. So that same familiar margin area here. And now to select a segment, just click drag and drop. And then Atlas TI already saves this quotation. So once again, we see the blue vertical bar. By clicking on the play button, Atlas TI will play only this segment, so we can easily revise the quotation. Then maybe we decide, oh, it should start a bit earlier, or, it should end up here. So we can easily adjust it. And then the same as always, we can right click to add our coding, use the buttons above, and drag and drop from the left-hand side. So to create video or audio quotations, we can just click drag and drop on the right-hand side to save our quotations, so the segments of the video or audio, and then continue adding our codes and our memos. Now, if you are working with video data, so if you're working with audio data, it's the same practice. The only difference is you don't have this image in the center. But if you are going to be working with videos, and let's say you also want to analyze, the visual aspects of what's going on in this video here. So for example, maybe I want to analyze as well how the family's interacting. The father has both children and the son is going away. I want to get into these details of what's happening here. Well, we can also easily capture snapshots of any of our videos. Just click here, and Atlas TI basically takes a screenshot of what you have on your video, and it's added this as a new image in our project. So if we look at our list of documents, we have a new document here, and this is an image file. We can open it up, and we have the screenshot from our video here. And so now we can analyze this image data. So how do we analyze graphical data then? Well, you'll do the same thing as always. We select the segment that we're interested in. So we just click drag and drop. And then, like always, we can use the buttons up here or right click, or just drag and drop our codes from the left-hand side. And remember, we can create as many quotations as we want. They can be overlapping, so we can go into as much or as little detail as we want here with our analysis. And so with that, you know how to analyze image data, video and audio data, and textual data. Now, what if I want to now, retrieve some of my analyzed data? So let's imagine, we've gone through and analyzed all these different types of documents here and done a lot of coding and writing in our memos. And now I'm at the part in my analysis where I want to see everything that we found about, this relationship between children and happiness. Well, each of these main entities of Atlas TI has its own manager. From the managers, we can see more detailed information on them, and we can also, sort of edit or organize, in this case, the codes, and we can export reports. So let's say I want to see all the data we have on children and happiness here, on our codes here, and I want to export a report. So let's open up the codes manager. So we see all the codes in the project. And now just a few notes on the code manager and some of the things we can do from here. So as you can see, we've organized our codes. We've given them different colors, so we can always easily give colors to our codes from the code manager. And we can also organize our codes by grouping them. So we can create different code groups. We see them all here. And so we've grouped together similar codes, for example. And to create a group of codes, all you have to do is highlight the codes you want to group together, and then drag and drop them on the left-hand side here where we see the groups. And then we can give a name here. Maybe these are my instrumental codes, for example. And there we have it. Any single code can belong to more than one group, so you can group the codes and organize them in whatever way you prefer. So here we have, all our codes about this relationship between happiness and children. Do they decrease, increase happiness? No effect. If you notice, whenever we click on a code down below, we can see its comment. Every single individual object in Atlas TI has its own comment space. And this space simply serves to provide any additional information about that specific object. So you can also think of the comment as a sticky note that's always going to be attached to that particular object. So when it comes to codes, we like to take advantage of this space to write out the operational definition of each code. To say, what exactly does this code refer to? How do we understand this concept in this study? So operational definitions are important, for transparency in our research and also to help with rigor and consistency. And so the comment space is the perfect space for that. We'll always have the information easily available there. And okay, so now we can see, what the codes mean. We have the definitions, but all right, I want to see all the data we have behind the codes. We can already see the groundedness. That's telling us how many quotations we have associated to each code. Let's go ahead and bring up all these quotations. I'll select the codes that I'm interested in, and let's export a report. We always have the option to either export reports in Excel, in which case we'll have it as a table, or we can export it as a text report, and then we can save it as a Word or a PDF file. Since I want to see all the quotations, I prefer to read text in a Word document instead of an Excel table, so I'll click on Report. And now we just tell Atlas TI what information we want included in this report. I want to see the comments written on my codes. Yes, I want to see the definitions. I want to see the quotations associated and the full content of these quotations. Definitely. I want to see if I have any memos associated to these quotations. Yeah, sure. We just mark the options of whatever information we want included in this report. And by clicking on these drop-down arrows, you can continue to include more detailed information on each of these different objects. So the reports are fully customizable and you can have as much or as little information as you want. Let's go ahead and create the report. And now Atlas TI puts together all this information in one single document for us. So we can see the project, who created it, what kind of report it is. And here we have our first code, its comment, its definition, and we see we have 21 quotations. So here's the first quotation. This is the name that's automatically given, the full content of it, and I see I don't have any memos there. Here's our second quotation. We can see we do have a memo here attached, so I can also see my reflections about this piece of data. And so we have all of the quotations, all the relevant data here together. And we continue going down, and here's the second code, and then all of its quotations. So everything is right here now. And then we can save it on our computer, and we can choose if we want it to be a Word or a PDF file. And then, later when I'm writing about the relationship between children and happiness, Well, I don't even have to go back into Atlas TI. I can just look at the different reports that we've exported. So this is great for quickly retrieving information, or if you want to share it with someone else or create reports and we can attach them maybe as appendices to our articles. And of course, there's a variety of applications here, but exporting reports is certainly a great way to retrieve data, and it's certainly a time saver, because just with one click, we can see all the relevant information put in one document for us. And so now that you're familiar with the code manager, well, you'll know how to use all of the managers because they all have the exact same interface and practice. I'll just open up the document manager just to show you. But we can see, it's the same idea here, except that we're working with documents. And for example, the documents also have their comment space. But in this case, we take advantage of this space to write the full reference of any of our secondary sources. And so we'll always know exactly where it came from. We can group our documents to organize them. If we want to organize participants or, our articles and so on. And of course, we can export reports as well. But, besides just coding and seeing, what I wrote in my memos, well, I also like to work in a visual way, to kind of draw connections across all the information and draw out maps. And so I want to create a network. In Atlas TI, we can create as many networks as we want, and we can visualize any part of our project in a network. So let's create a new network here, and I want to use this to explore the different definitions of happiness that we've identified throughout our study here. So we have a blank space here, and we can add any part of our project to it. Well, we have some codes here on different types of definitions of happiness, so I'll go ahead and add these in. Just drag and drop to include them in your network. So we started with this global overarching code, definitions of happiness, but we quickly realized that this was too broad, too large. And so we realized that there's actually different, common types of or ways of defining happiness. And so we created these additional codes, these kinds of subcodes, and we use the prefix to, remind ourselves that long-term view is a type of definition of happiness. But now I'd like to visually show this hierarchical relationship between these codes. These codes are a part of this one. So let's link them together. We click on the first code, and then this little red circle appears in the corner. So now to link codes, we'll click on this circle, drag and drop onto the code we want to associate it to, and when we let go, we can choose a name for this relation. This code is a part of this code. So we click from the circle, drag and drop, and choose a relation name. Now we can create any relation names that we want, and we can edit any of these relations. So we can even change the width or the style or the color of these lines. So again, very flexible tool here so that we can draw out whatever kinds of networks that we would like. And so there we have it. It's a pretty simple but certainly easy to understand network here, showing the different ways of defining happiness that we identified in our study. Okay, but we don't have to stop here. In fact, I'd like to include some more detailed information. Let's take a look under the View tab of the Network Tools, and we can choose to view more information here. So for example, we can visualize the comments that have been written. So this is great because now I can already show the definitions of all of the codes here, and anyone who looks at this network will understand how these concepts were investigated in this study, what we mean when we talk about long-term view. So that's great that we can visualize that here. We can also show frequencies. So I'm just going to refresh this network so we see the updated frequencies there. And so the frequencies are showing us the groundedness and density of each of the codes here. So groundedness tells us how many quotations are associated to this code. And density tells us how many links this code has with any other codes in the project. So here we have a density of 3 because we have 1, 2, 3 links. So we, the researchers, create the density of our codes. Okay, so frequencies are nice to give us an idea, more or less of how the codes were used in the project, how much data we have behind each code. And so, for example, about happiness being subjective, I can see we have 9 quotations here. And I'd like to refresh my memory. What was it that people said about subjectivity here? Maybe I want to take a look at these pieces of data that we have here. So let's go ahead and add those quotations. So by right-clicking on any object in the network, we can add its neighbors, anything else that's been associated to it. And like I said, I want to see the quotations, so we'll click. And then Atlas TI brings in all the quotations that have been associated to this code. If a quotation's also been associated with another code in the network, Atlas TI will show us that. So of course it remembers all that coding and all that work that we did. And now we can visualize these overarching connections among the different parts of our project. Now, at the moment, Atlas TI is just showing the names of the quotations. And although we can edit these names and put whatever name we'd like, in reality, I would just rather be able to see the actual content of the quotations here. So let's check preview, and great. Now we can see the full content of all of our quotations right in our network. We can even see our image quotations here. And so now, I can see that, oh, this is a great point here that really illustrates, these two things. Maybe this one isn't so relevant, so I'll just remove it from the network. And we can link together any parts of our network. So then maybe I see that here are the participants saying something really interesting, but then later they actually contradicted themselves. And so, wow, this is really interesting, and I want to show that this quotation contradicts this one. So we can also create quotation links and just work directly on the level of the data if we prefer. And remember, we can visualize any part of our project in a network. So why don't we go ahead and also include that memo that we wrote earlier? And then maybe, I want to put this memo here, and I want to show that this memo is related to our code here about definitions of happiness. And so now, we're starting to create a network here where we can see the main concepts and our reflections on it and different pieces of data that are illustrating our points. And so great. But now that I've added all this extra stuff here, I've kind of made a mess of my network, and I'd like to organize this a bit better. Well, we can take advantage of all these different layout options that Atlas TI has here. So we can explore different ways of organizing the network. And so then we can choose whatever layout we prefer. And so let's say, okay, I'm happy with this kind of layout like this. We can clearly see everything, and so I'll save my network. And then, of course, we can export this network as an image file or PDF. And then, I want to include this in my final article or in my presentation. And it's a great way to, present a summary of your analysis or findings, or to illustrate different points, and well, I suppose it always helps as well to present information visually. And we can use networks in all sorts of ways. You can also create your conceptual or theoretical frameworks here. Or maybe you just want to brainstorm and draw out mind maps. So we create as many networks as we want. And it's certainly well, it's certainly one of my favorite parts of working in Atlas TI, where you can start to draw the connections across everything and start understanding the global picture of your project. So now finally, I'd like to take a look at some of the different, some of the other analysis tools that we can use in Atlas TI. So under the Analyze tab, we can find these advanced analysis tools here. And so let's take a look. Let's start with the Query tool. So with this tool, we can search for any quotation in our project. And we can search for quotations based on our individual codes, or we can also just directly search based on groups of codes. So we can choose here, we have all the codes in our project. And so the great thing about the query tool is that we can even already, plant our research questions and then see what data comes up to help us answer that question. So for example, of course, in this research, we're very interested in this relation between happiness and children. And so we have 4 codes here, and if you remember from earlier, it was these 4 codes about increasing, reducing happiness, or equal. And now I want to see all the quotations we have associated to these codes. So if we double click, we'll load it in the query space. Now since I double clicked on the group, well now Atlas TI below will show all of the quotations associated to any of the codes inside this group. So great, this is a pretty straightforward query. We just told Atlas TI, show me the quotations of these codes. And we even did the same thing earlier when we exported a report. But the great thing about the query tool is that we can conduct more complex queries. And so one of my research questions is, what do parents, what do families with children say about this relationship between happiness and children? So I don't just want to see all the quotations that we found here, but I want to see the quotations that also come from families with children. So I want to see the quotations from these codes and the quotations from families that have children. And now, although we see fewer quotations here, these are much more meaningful quotations because here I have all the information about what do families with children say about the relation between happiness and children. And so now, we can again save this as a report. We can either check the options ourselves or, even use these automatic options. And so then I can save all this data in one place. And, from here I can work to answer my research question. And we can even continue to add more and more layers to this query. You can query the data in whatever way you prefer. And you can use any of the operators up here to create combinations of your codes or code groups. Now remember, you don't need to memorize what each operator does, because just by hovering your mouse over that button, Atlas TI will explain exactly how this operator works. If you want to focus on a particular subset of your data, you can also edit the scope. And then you can tell Atlas TI, only look for quotations from this document or from this group of documents. And we can likewise do combinations of documents using these set operators. So the query tool is great for, querying your data, and then, you can interrogate it by making these different kinds of queries or combinations of codes or documents, and then see what comes up from it. So next I'd like to take a look at the code co-occurrence table. So with this tool, I'll go ahead and actually float the window so we can see it clearly. And so with this tool, we can analyze co-occurrences of codes. Now, what does this mean? Well, co-occurrence refers to the coexistence of any two codes on the same piece of data. So this can mean that we have a quotation that has two codes on them. These codes are co-occurring. Or maybe we have codes that are overlapping. They're on overlapping quotations. So that's also co-occurrence. And so by analyzing co-occurrences, we can get an idea of possibly emergent relations among our codes. So let's take a look with an example here. Throughout our study, we identified a series of positive and negative effects of parenting that people mentioned. And so we just mark the codes that we want to put in rows and columns. Atlas TI creates the table for us. And so now we can see, this code co-occurs 4 times with this code. If we click on the cell down below, we'll see the quotations where we have these co-occurrences. So in 4 instances, these two codes were on the same piece of data. We can see them here. Now, maybe, we see a quotation here and I say, yes, this is interesting, but I can't remember who was it that said this? What were they talking about here? What context did this come up in? By double-clicking on any quotation, Atlas TI will always open up that quotation back in its original document, back in its full context. And so we always stay close to the data. And we can indeed see here, we do have our co-occurrences of let's take a look here, of positive and negative effects. So we have some overlapping. And so with this, we can always easily, revisit the context. We don't remove our data from its context. But okay, so we have the table. We can see, things are co-occurring and how many times. All right, but, how might we interpret this result? Well, taking a look here, I see we have a pretty high co-occurrence between the negative effect of having more worries and stress and responsibilities and the positive effect of experiencing personal growth. So it seems that in 13 different instances, when participants were talking about, having children brings more worries and stress, well, at the same time, it seems that they also said, but I get this feeling of personal growth. And so I wonder why this is. I didn't expect to see a positive and negative effect coming together so frequently. So I wonder what's going on here. Is there some underlying explanation between these two concepts? For example, maybe we're seeing this trend because, in order for anyone to experience personal growth, they have to undergo more worries and stress. And maybe that can help explain this trend that we're seeing between these codes. In reality, what I would do now is open up a memo. And then there I would write. So I did a code co-occurrence analysis, and I can see here, and maybe it's because of this explanation. And then we can go through and look through the quotations and see, does my interpretation make sense? Does it fit with the data or not? How can I adjust it? And in that way, we can elaborate our understanding. If we ever want to save just these little lists of quotations, we can always export them to Excel. And if I want to save this whole table, also, we can open it in Excel. And then that's also great because from Excel, if you want, you can create a graphic as well. It may be a bar chart or a pie chart. And that's also something interesting to include in the final report or presentation. So with the code co-occurrence table, we can see the co-occurrences among our codes or possibly emerging relationships among our codes. And finally, let's take a look at the code document table. So again, we can construct a table here, but in this case, we're looking at the frequencies of our codes. So we can work with individual codes or groups, and same goes for our documents. So for example, we also identified, we also looked at the different reasons for having children that people talked about. And now I want to see who talked about which reasons, how many times were these codes used in the different parts of our project. So I want to look at my participant data from our survey here. Now we could just mark, each individual one, but actually I would like to directly compare between the male and female participants. Since we used Atlas TI when we imported our survey data, we had the software automatically group together our participants according to their gender. And so now we can take advantage of these groups to easily, make comparisons and contrast between both of them. So I can see that this code appears once inside the documents in this group and twice in this group. In other words, it seems that female participants mentioned altruism once, while male participants mentioned it twice. Again, if we click on the cell down below, we'll see those exact quotations. And okay, so now we can already get a nice kind of global understanding of where in our project the different codes were used. And we can easily compare between male and female here and the different reasons for having children they mentioned. It's interesting that, only female participants talked about unconditional love, while only male participants talked about, I always knew I'd have children. So again, I could open up a memo here and write out my interpretations. But, what if, just looking here, I can see there might be a possible problem with just looking at our frequencies. Because right now we have absolute frequencies. But what if in this project we had 20 female participants and 5 male participants? Well, with so many more female participants, of course, we're going to have higher frequencies. And so then, we can't make accurate comparisons because, just because there's a higher number here doesn't mean that it's actually reflecting the trends among male and female. So then what do we do? Well, we have Atlas TI here to help, and we can normalize the counts. So by selecting this option, Atlas TI takes into consideration the size of data, the amount of data behind each one, the size of the documents here, and it'll adjust the counts so that now we can indeed make accurate comparisons of these numbers. And moreover, we can look at relative frequencies. So this gives us an even better idea of the trends here. So now I can see that of altruism, almost 69% of the information came from our male participants here. So we can look at relative frequencies of rows, of columns, or the whole table. Or if you're not so interested in seeing the numbers, we can also binarize the table, in which case Atlas TI simply tells us whether or not a code appeared. Yes, it appears, or no, it does not. So we have all these different options here, and again, we can export this to Excel to save it and create graphics or use it for a final report or presentation. And so that's the code document table, where we can see the frequencies of our codes across any part of our project. And with that, we've seen a global overview of Atlas TI 8 for Windows. And so now hopefully you're all ready to download the free trial version on your computer and add your data and start analyzing. Save your quotations to segment the data, associate your codes, and write in memos. You can use the different analysis tools to query or interrogate your data in a different way or retrieve your results and reports. and create networks to visualize your analysis. So now I'd be happy to take time to answer any questions if anyone has any questions or doubts, or if you'd like to go over anything that we saw so far. Please feel free to write in the chat box that we have here on the GoToWebinar panel. I'd be happy to take these last minutes that we have here. And so I can see, I'm taking a look now, and so we have a question. Could you please mention how to use for theory-driven codes? So I assumed you mean with theory-driven codes, my understanding is you mean codes that come from theory, pre-existing codes. And so it's true, typically in analysis, we can choose either to carry out analysis in an inductive way or a deductive way. And so with inductive approaches, we generate codes that emerge from the data. We start with the data and then we work our way up towards constructing a theory or an understanding. So inductive codes, we create the codes in the moment. But with a deductive approach, then yes, we already have a theory and we're going to analyze our data to see, does it fit the theory, and to kind of test or confirm this theory. So then it's driven by an already existing theory. If you're going to be working in a deductive manner, you already know what concepts you're looking for, then just create the codes when you create your project. So I can open my project, and then here I would just create new codes, and then you can write the code names that you know you're going to want to use. So maybe with children and happiness, so I knew that I'm going to look at what types of family structures might there be, as well, different statuses of parents and children, as well life satisfaction or well-being, And so if I already had a framework that I knew I was going to use, then I would just create the codes for each of those dimensions or concepts that I'm interested in. So basically we just construct the code list and then we analyze the data, and all I'm worried about is dragging and dropping my codes. I won't even think about creating new ones because I know these are the codes I'm using. So certainly you can work, in a theory-driven approach. It's just a matter of, do you create your codes beforehand, or are you going to create them while you're analyzing, or do a mix of both, as you also certainly could do. If you already have a full code list that you know you want to use, you can also just import it right here. So if you have an Excel spreadsheet, let's say, and you have the code names and you've written the definitions as well, you can import this into Atlas TI and it'll already, create all the codes and put the definitions in their comment space. And so then, if you have a lot of codes, it can be cumbersome to manually enter it. So just import it right here. Let's see if we have any other questions. And so I can see that I had to say, I want to analyze co-occurrence between a code and a code group. So I created a smart code and opened the code co-occurrence table and selected the codes of my interest across in rows and columns, but they do not appear. So let's see. So this is a bit of a more advanced question. And so what is being asked here, so I want to do a co-occurrence analysis between, let's say, this code and my code group. So, for example, trying to think, well, sure, let's go ahead and stick with our example from before, positive and negative effects. Maybe instead of looking at each one individually, I just want to look overall, how often do these occur, these codes with these codes? Well, we can't directly analyze groups with co-occurrence analyses because any single code might belong in more than one group. And so then you can't really get the accurate calculations. But we can sidestep this by creating what we call a smart code. And a smart code is merely a combination of codes. I can create a smart code here to say negative effects, and then I'll make another one for positive. And basically, this smart code is now just saving all of the quotations of those codes under one same code. So let's see, now I have negative and positive effects, and we can see this little gray gear icon to show it's a smart code. And so these smart codes will continue, adding quotations as we code with the other ones. And it's really more of a way to save a query. Just like we did with the query tool, well, here this code has all of the quotations of all those codes we selected. But what the great thing is that now we can open the code co-occurrence table. And let's see where we have positive effects and negative. And then we can see the co-occurrence among them. So that's sort of a way to sidestep, if you want to analyze groups, and I hope that helps you, Gagan. I believe you also sent me an email about this yesterday. I also responded, so hopefully that's now clear. But for all you others, if it wasn't very clear, don't worry about it. In most cases, you don't really even need to use it. But as well, like I said, you can find video tutorials or look at our manual online if you ever want to learn more about these other additional little features that we didn't have time to go into too much detail today. And I see that Sophie asks, when a code shows up with hashtag FAM or for HC, so these things, right? Was that manually inputted or did it appear because of the grouping? All of this has been manually inputted. Always, we decide how we're going to analyze and organize the data. Atlas TI isn't going to make any decisions for us. And so what this is basically we put prefixes on our codes because it's a nice way to indicate subcodes. Also, since everything appears in alphabetical order, then we can ensure that all the codes appear together in the list. It just makes it easier to look at, and to find the different codes of your project. But yes, we put these prefixes. It's just a matter of renaming the code, and then you can put whatever prefixes you want, if it's the concept or a symbol or a number. You can organize your code list in whatever way you want. I see Rucher asks if it's possible to join codes. So we already saw how you can link codes in networks, and that's a semantic linkage. But if you want to literally join two codes together, you can merge codes. So let's imagine I have a code here, effects, and I realize I accidentally made a duplicate. I have effects, but I have negative effects right here. But I didn't realize, and shoot, now I have all these, these two codes with different quotations. But I don't want to just delete a code, because if we delete it, we'll lose all those associations we made with the quotations. So what we can do is merge. And then Atlas TI will put these two codes together into one code, and it'll move all the quotations together here. So we just select the codes, merge, and choose which code you want to keep as the final one. And Atlas TI moves the quotations over. You can merge codes as many codes as you want, and you can also split codes. So those are also some ways to edit your list of codes. And great. So I can see that someone asks, so how do I reference an author from a document once I've exported my data? I suppose that would depend on your discipline and the referencing style. In my case, I use APA style, and so referencing an author from a document, well, definitely when working with secondary sources, the perfect space to write out the references here is in the comment space of each document. So it's already here. And then when I export reports, I always like to include the comment space. And so I can just do a report of the comments of my documents. Actually, let me just do it of a couple to do this quickly. And then I have the references right there. That's one way. Another little tip is that I like to rename my documents to also include the referencing information right there. So that's the case with the article we were looking at before. I already put the citation information in the title, Angeles 2009. And so then whenever I'm writing a memo or anything, I have it right there and I know exactly how to cite it. So of course, we can rename any of our documents. And I think I've found that to be really helpful to just put the citation information right there. And then you can easily keep track of it all. And okay, one more question then. Will the work I do in the trial version be saved when I put a license key in to upgrade to the full version? Yes, it will. If you download the free trial version, I can just show that here from our website, atlasti.com. Download the free trial, and you have it without any time limit. The only limitation is the size of the project that you can save. So for example, we can only add up to 10 documents. But as long as you don't have more than 10 documents, you'll be able to save the project, close it, come back to it, work on it for as long as you want. And then let's say you've purchased Atlas TI, you got your license key. And so then what you'll do is when you open your free trial version, just go to options and you can enter your license key here. And same, actually, every time you open the free trial version, a message appears asking for a license key. So if you don't have one, you just close it and continue with the free trial. But if you do, then copy paste it. The full version is activated, and you continue working on that project. So great. It's great to see a lot of interest in Atlas TI, and I'll go ahead and conclude by putting up our contact information here again, because we are out of time now. But we I'm happy to answer any other questions via email or telephone. So please, count on our support. And I thank you all for your great interest in Atlas TI. I hope you found the webinar helpful. And so now you're ready to start using the software in your own project. And then feel free to explore on our website, or you can also check out our YouTube channel for all the different videos. And well, other than that, I just wish you all the best of luck with your qualitative data analysis journeys with Atlas TI. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Goodbye.